The second note of the major scale is D. So we have to skip a fret here because our first note is C sharp, and we have our D note here on the second fret. So we have Do, Re, or C, D. And then we're going to keep moving down. Our next note is E, and we can find that here with our open E string. Our fourth note is F, which we know E and F sit right next to each other. So our F note is right here on the first fret of the E string. And then we have a G note, which is our fifth. So again, we have to skip our sharp, which is in between, and move to our third fret to play G. And our next note will be A, which we have as our open string. And then we move down here to our seventh, which is B. And then we finish it on C. And you probably recognize this because it looks like a C chord. The cool thing about this scale is anything that you're playing in the key of C, you can use these notes to create melodies. You can also use this scale as practice just to work on finger dexterity. It also applies to chords and a lot of different things that you're going to use going forward. So what I encourage you to do is practice this scale and say the note names as you do it, because now not only are you practicing a scale, but you're learning where the notes are in this very important region that we play all the time on the uke, which is in these first 3 to 5 frets. If you can start memorizing the notes just in this small region, it's going to help you to start learning them as you go down the neck. So again, let's just go through the scale. We have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And then we work backwards. C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. So do that as much as you can. Use it as a warm-up. Get really comfortable learning that C major scale, and I'm going to talk to you in this next element here about how it's really going to help you to learn chords. If you're digging the sound of my uke, head over to allforuke.com/shop. You can have a Kala ukulele for yourself. When you buy your Kala ukulele through All for Uke, you're supporting us, and we really appreciate it. Make sure you check it out. Concerts, sopranos, tenors, baritones, a wide selection of accessories, capos, and more. All for you, allforuke.com/shop. The next element of music theory I'd like to discuss is learning the chords of a key. So we talked about the major scale and how those notes lay out, but the cool thing about it is each of those notes actually directly relates to a chord. So let's discuss this in the key of C. So our major scale we learned was C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So for each of those notes, we're going to assign a numeral and a chord. And there's a couple of patterns here that we need to talk about as well. So in the key of C, our first note is C. So that is our 1. And that is also a major chord. So when we talk about the key of C, the first chord in the key is C major. Now the second note in the major scale is D. And in a key signature for the major key of C, the second chord is always a minor chord. And this is a pattern that exists for all major keys. So we have our C major chord relating to our C note. Our D note reveals a D minor chord. So we have C is 1, D minor is 2, and that's a lowercase 2 numeral. Our third chord is going to be related to the E note, which is our open string E, and that is also going to be a minor chord, E minor. So we have major, minor, minor for 1, 2, 3. Our fourth note in the scale is F. That relates directly to our 4 chord, which is F major. So the 4 chord in a major key is always a major chord. Fifth note is G, and is also going to be a major chord, G major, or it could be G7. Our sixth note, our open A, is our 6th chord, and the 6th chord in a key is always a minor chord. So we have our A minor chord. And then our seventh note is B, and that is always going to be our diminished chord, which is played here. And then we finish off with our C note, which is our octave, and we're back to C. So take a listen here. I'll play the major scale, and then I'll play each chord that relates to it. And you can kind of hear, as you play the chords, the movement of the scale as it goes along. So again, we have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And as that relates to chords, we have C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, B diminished, C. So that's just for the key of C, but I'm going to have a PDF for this lesson that'll have all of the different keys that relate back to the major scales, so you can check that out if you grab the link in the description. And the last element that I think is important to learn, and this one might be a little bit advanced, but I think you guys can all do this based on what we've learned so far, and that's naming the tones of a chord as it relates to the notes. So we have, in this example here, a C chord. So when you play a C chord, you are actually playing the G string, C string, E string, and A string, which are all notes. So if you take a look, and what this is called is spelling a chord, you go through here and name the notes of the chord, and then you assign them a number. So starting off here, we have the G note, because that's an open G string. And then we have an open C note. And we have an open E note. And then we're fretting the third fret here on the A string, so we also have another C note because we have A, B, C. So the three notes that exist in a C major chord are C, E, and G. And then we have a duplicate note, which is our C. So what that means is each of those notes is assigned a numeral, and it all again relates back to the major scale. So let's look at the major scale. Again, we have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. C is our first note, so we call that the one, or we call that the root of the chord, because that's the defining element of the chord. So C would be our one, and then if we find out we have the E note in there too, that we go through the alphabet, C, D, E. So E would be our third, and if we keep going, we go up to G, E, F, G. G is our 5. So now we know that if we break down this C major chord, it's constructed of the first, the third, and the fifth degree of the major scale, and that is what the pattern is for a major chord: 1, 3, and 5. So for any major chord that you play in the key of C, or any key for that matter, you are playing the first, the third, and the fifth. Let's take a look at another major chord in the key of C, the F chord. So the F chord is played like so. We have second fret of the G string, which is an A note. We have our open C string, so that's C. We have first fret of the E string, which is our F note. So it's an F chord, F note. You know that is the root of the chord, or the one. And then again, we have an open A string down here. So the notes that we found in this chord are A, C, F, and A. Well, we know F is our root, so let's start with F as our starting point, because for every chord that you're trying to spell, you need to first identify what the root of the chord is. So for F, it's the F note. So if we go through the alphabet, just relating to the key of C, and we start on F, we count up from there. F, G is our 2, 3 would be A, 4 would be B, and then 5 would be C. So let's look at the chord again. So our A note here would be our third. Our C note would be our fifth. We have our root here on the E string, and then we have a duplicate of our third with that A. So again, just like the C chord, the major F chord is made up of the root, the third, and the fifth. Now, what happens if we're playing a minor chord? Let's take a look at a D minor chord, because this is all has to be in relationship to the key of C when we're spelling these chords. Now, looking at D minor. So D minor, much like the F chord, it has some similar notes here. We have our A note, which is on the second fret. We have a D note on our C string. We have an F note on our E string, and we have an A note. So, finding our root first, we know that we have our root here exists on the C string. Our A note up here on the G string. So if I start from D, I count D, E, F, G, A. We know that this is our fifth. And here on the first fret, we have the third, because we go D, E, F, and that is the third. So a minor chord, same thing. You count up just using your alphabet, using the notes of the key of C, starting with D as your starting point, because you know it's a D minor chord, where D is the root of the chord. So this F note here, actually, as it pertains to the major scale, would be called your flat third, because if you were talking about the key of D, F sharp would actually be the major third, so we're using the flat third here. I don't want to get too much into that aspect of things. What I want you to do is use your small version of the alphabet, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, as you look at any chord in the key of C and you start learning the notes for each of those chords. We touched upon a lot of different elements of music theory today, and I know it's a lot to consume in one sitting, so I put together a PDF that you can download for free that will have examples and graphics for each of these elements that we discussed today. Also want to mention, if you have any questions, leave those in the comments below. I love hearing from you guys. Where are you playing uke around the world? I thank you so much for learning with me. My name is Kevin. I'll see you next time.
Meet me down by the sea.